Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a video and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, I'm privileged to welcome a very, very accomplished individual from Israel, Josia Nakash. Josiah, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ashutosh. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Josiah is the co-founder of the CEO Collective, and we'll talk about what she does there. She's also the founder of the Good Vibe Agencies. And interestingly, she's from the Israel Defense Forces, where she has been a sniper instructor. That's what is most exciting for me.
I was the second female sniper instructor in the Israeli army many years ago.
Wow. So maybe we'll talk about that also. So tell me, Josiah, what would you say are three key milestones in your life or your career?
Three key milestones. I'd say it all started when I lost two sisters right at the end of my army service.
Wow.
I lost two sisters, one right out with a year apart.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that changed the whole course of my life because it really changes you. Unfortunately, the only way for us to sort of get woken up about what's really going on here is through these negative events. So I got a very big wake-up call.
Wow.
That really influenced my life. And then a few years later, I discovered what that was all about. And it was to lead me to really understand why we're here, what's the purpose of life, what's the meaning of life. I'm not going to get into all that here, but it's very, earth-shattering stuff. It's not, it's stuff, losing, some people lose one sister, 50 years apart. I lost them 1 year apart. So I really started saying, what's going on? Something's going on here.
Very
this is so strange.
Sorry to hear that. I lost a brother, my baby brother, 8 years ago. So I can empathize with what you're saying.
But I was 18, so I never expected to bury my beautiful sister. So it's really
that's very sad.
Very life-changing.
I agree with you. And then give me two other milestones.
So two other milestones, like I said, was discovering my purpose for being here, which was a huge milestone. And after that was getting married and having a daughter, which was a huge, huge milestone for me. And
wonderful.
Then you really understand what it means to invest in another human being, I
agree with you. So let's talk about, your organization called the CEO Collective. Tell me what you do here and what are your objectives?
Okay, well, I'm a big marketing consultant for the high-tech sector here in Israel. I've always worked with founders, literally, from the stage where you're in a coffee shop writing on a napkin. Some of those companies are some of our most successful high-tech companies. Amazing. I help them raise funding. I help them with strategy. I basically did everything to get them out to the world before they had a marketing department. It was just the founders, their technology, and they had nothing in those days. Israelis in those days barely even knew what marketing was. So I just used to do everything, and I just used to launch them to the world. And they were very, very successful. All the branding and everything, all the writing, their whole image. That's what I used to do. So I wanted to start explaining to companies the new things that they have to be saying now, the new image that they have to be successful, which is not just about business anymore. Now companies have to be very conscious. They have to have an image that they appear to be caring about the whole, about the collective. You go into any site and you have the very boring about us, solutions, products, and all that. I think is just going to go away because people want to connect where there's human warmth. They want to feel things. We've all gotten a lot more emotional. We got a huge boost of EQ from this whole pandemic. So we want to feel connected to these brands. And actually the brands that are doing the best right now are very, very purpose-driven brands. The CEO of Unilever, he said in a live the other day that his purpose products, they have the highest growth. They're leading in growth. We're going into a whole new stage of business, and now we have to be much more conscious about how we're contributing to the whole. So I created this CEO Collective. at first I wanted to just influence the marketing of companies with all these new things. And then I saw that that's not going to work. You can't come from the outside and say, now speak a different way. People have to go through an experience. They have to experience this collective consciousness. They have to experience this new integral feeling, and then they will know what changes to make. So that's why I created the CEO Collective. We bring people together, we bring leaders together. They go through a very simple human experience together. There's a connection game, there's a workshop question.
Can you give me an example of how you bring people together, and maybe share an experience?
Sure, like we did with the Entrepreneurs Forum in the north of London a couple of weeks ago. We created an event. It was actually a 2-hour event. We bring all these leaders together. They were all CEOs, chairmen, investors. They were very high-level leaders.
Sure.
Now, it might sound a bit counterintuitive in the middle of the day for these people to be sitting and not talking about how to improve your sales, not getting a presentation about, making your business better. It's just purely we bring people together to focus on connection. Because what I'm claiming is that when we focus on connection, we create this amazing vibe between people, and then all the amazing business stuff will flow from there, and it'll flow much easier because we sort of get past this egoistic thing that's blocking us. So we bring people together, the leaders, and they go through a very simple process. It's not rocket science. There's a connection game. Like in the Entrepreneurs Forum, we spoke about the question, the connection game was, what hobby did you start during lockdown? And really the highest level person in the event, he was telling us how he started laying bricks in his house and how he revamped his old Rover, his Jeep and stuff. And there was this very fancy lawyer there. She started saying she ordered bees and she started beekeeping in the middle of the pandemic. I mean, so then all of a sudden you see these people in a completely different light, and these people who are actually a community of leaders all of a sudden had this incredible new level of connection between them.
Yes, very nice. So, when I was reading about you, you also said that you are helping companies to manage the toxic human energies that exist between us. Help me understand this with an example.
So everywhere in our world, there's toxic energy between humans. I think in the past, people didn't understand what I was talking about, but I think now it's a lot clearer that we have this toxic energy. We don't really think well of our fellow man. We're always very focused on ourselves, me. And look at the whole situation in Texas, how that Senator Ted Cruz, he just got on a plane. People didn't have water, food, heating, and he hopped on a plane to Cancun with his family. I mean, what better example do you need that people are just sort of...
Staying with the corporate sector, when you're faced with such toxic energy, what would you do as someone who will intervene?
So even if you don't see it with your eyes, and even if there aren't actual clashes and people, actually fighting, the toxic energy is there. It's beneath the surface. I'm not so concerned with what people are saying to each other. I'm concerned with what's under the engine, that people are... In any company, we've created this egoistic system. In any company, people are trampling to get ahead, to be number one, to be next to the boss, to get a better title, to get a promotion. And you do that by trampling on other people. And that's how the system was set up. So there's all this stuff going on under the surface in any company, in any organization. So what am I saying? That we have to bring people together. We have to first be aware that it exists. And before, people used to not understand what I'm talking about. And I think now it's much clearer what I'm talking about, that it's there and people are starting to talk about it now, which I'm very happy about. And you bring people together and you systematically invest in human connection. And you do that being very conscious that that toxic energy is there. It's beneath the surface. So you don't need to actually wait to a point of eruption where people are fighting and there's these huge clashes. You don't have to wait for that. You can very systematically bring your global team together, activate your global connection, and connect people on a deeper level. And that's going to protect you from all this destruction that it's costing companies billions and billions of dollars.
Correct.
It takes nowadays one person to do one stupid thing in a company, and, an airline, there's all these stories from the last few years, and the brand is ruined. People tearing up their membership card and everything because one person ego erupted.
Correct. Very well said. So, one of the challenges that or the opportunities that have come up as a result of the pandemic is that people have been able to integrate much better with their families. But from a corporate perspective, connections, integration, cohesion seems to have been lost. And you say the next wave of human and tech innovation will be around human connection, integration, and cohesion. How will this happen?
Well, let me give you an example, because the CEO of Unilever, Alan Jope, he gave a live a couple of weeks ago, and he said, there's 150,000 people in our company that I bring the whole company together to get, and he's an amazing conscious leader of the future. He's an incredible leader. I'm not criticizing him. He says he puts out an email and invites the whole company to this session where he talks to them. Only 14,000 people out of the 150,000 people that work for him get an email, because the others don't have email. They work in factories. Out of those 14,000, only 7,000 joined the session with him because, it's the time and everything.
Sure.
So 7,000 people are on this call with the CEO, and what do? They write questions, and whichever question is upvoted the most, that's the question he answers. So it's an amazing initiative that the CEO is taking an hour out of his time and connecting with his people in some way. But imagine if, instead of the CEO being the star of this situation and being the one with all the answers, and no human individual is the one with all the answers, because we've entered a collective stage. We need to come up with answers together now, collectively. Imagine if he brought 150,000 people together on a special platform, because Zoom and Microsoft, they can't handle that many people going into a session together and going into breakout rooms. You need new platforms for that. And maybe putting something in factories so it'd be very easy for those people to connect, people that don't have Zoom, people that don't have emails. Imagine how powerful it would be if he brought all those people together and they went through a very simple workshop together. How are you managing through the pandemic? How are you feeling? Connecting with different people from all over the world. These people are all pushing and focused in the same direction and the success of this huge global brand, but they've never connected. So imagine how much value there would be if you suddenly connected all these people.
Very interesting. The one more question before I move to another part of our discussion. You also mentioned that the currency of tomorrow is good energy.
It's so clear to see in the high-tech sector here, the companies that are getting the most funding, the companies that are flying successful through this pandemic are companies where there are just good vibes, where there's good vibes between the founders, between the people in the company. It's so obvious. It's so clear that that's the most important thing. There has to be a good spirit. Sometimes you walk into a company and there's all programmers and they have their heads down, and God forbid they should look up, and you can just cut and you can feel that the managers are fighting. You can just feel this tension in the air. You know what I mean? When you walk into companies like that, those companies are not going to succeed. You can't go into this new stage of conscious leadership and everybody's talking about all this DEI stuff, diversity, equality, and inclusion. You just can't you can't have all that fear and uncertainty and tension in the air and succeed in business anymore.
Very interesting. So, Josai, let's move on to some more questions for you. You worked with so many large organizations, so many startups. You've been in advertising. As an individual, what are some of the core values you believe in?
I wasn't born with these core values, but the core values are connection, human connection, how we need to treat other people the way we want to be treated. And that is not going to come naturally. It's not going to come naturally to any of us. We're going to have to be conscious that we have this problem, and we're going to have to systematically work at improving human connection. So my core values are have always been honesty, transparency. I'm an open book. I
Mhm.
never, that's how I treat people. That's how I behave. And that's how I expect other people to behave.
Okay. And let me now relate this with you, what we spoke about right in the beginning about you being the second woman sniper. How does being a sniper or trained as a sniper uh, conflict or resonate with the
It,
core values that you spoke about?
it's funny because Enrique from Hacking HR asked me the exact same question. First of all, it was over 30 years ago. I
Okay.
was the second female instructor. And in those days, they didn't let women shoot anyone. In those days, women were just instructors for
Hmm.
soldiers on the base.
Yeah.
We didn't actually go out to the field. But
Mhm.
now things are different. Now there's female fighter pilots, and now women do go out with actual ammunition out
Okay.
to where men go. And I was dying to do that when I was in the army, but I couldn't. In those days, women were treated very
Otherwise. Fair
differently.
enough. Fair enough. Well said. But then, to have become a sniper instructor, you must have been trained as a as a shooter.
Yes, of course. And women are very good at it because it
Oh,
requires very delicate, very sensitive. So women are actually better at it than men.
well said. Well said. So, you worked with startups, and I'm going to ask you one question on startups. And this is a question I ask many people who ask, because, the general view around the world is that only 1 out of 10 startups actually makes it. My question to you, Josiah, is that what, in your opinion, are some of the basic mistakes startup entrepreneurs make?
It's not my opinion, it's a fact.
Okay.
After years and years of watching startups and working with startups, it's a fact.
Mhm.
If the founders are fighting, if the ego is popped up between the founders,
Mhm.
the company is dead. It doesn't matter if they raise $300 million, the company is dead in the water.
Okay.
And I have an example from the early days.
Mhm.
There was a company, this founder, he just randomly chose 4 people to be his founders. It's much safer to
Mhm.
choose people who, your brother, your best friend from high school. And then
Correct.
even if you do have those disagreements, and of course those things are going to pop up, a startup is a very evolving, dynamic
Mhm.
situation.
Mhm.
So it's better for you to choose people who you have this natural connection with because
Mhm.
this stuff is going to come up. One of the CEOs of one of our biggest, most successful startups, he was here the other day, and
Mhm.
he took his brother to be his founder and his best friend, and he said,
Mhm.
the way we get along now, we just don't speak to each other. We each have our areas, and that's it.
Okay.
But the startup that I'm talking about from many years ago, where the founder just took 4 random people to be
Mhm.
his founders,
Mhm.
they ended up. All the egos popped up there and they ended up having this huge fight and they actually pushed him out of his own company.
Mhm.
Like horrible things happen, and it's all
Mhm.
because this bad energy between people, and it trickles down and it radiates, and
Mhm.
it's just the most destructive force. So the most
Very
important
interesting.
thing for an entrepreneur to do is surround himself with people
Mhm.
who they know they can get through anything together, the ups and the downs, and they're not going to start killing each other and blaming each other. And that's why Israeli startups are so successful, because most of them are people that came out of the army together.
Mhm.
Some of them are from the intelligence unit, and in the army you learn, you're all in this together. There's no religions, there's no this color people, that color people,
Very
there's no
well.
politics. It's a very human bonding situation, and it's a situation where you bond with people that you wouldn't normally bond with in regular society, because some of them are from poor areas, some of them are wealthy, but in the army you bond. In the army everyone's
Very well
equal.
said. Very well said. So I'm going to move now to your Good Vibe Agency. Tell me a little bit about this venture.
So I created the Good Vibe Agency. Like I said before, I wanted to tell companies, the marketing for the new era, that they need to start taking advantage of all their power and resources to put new messages. And then I realized recently, in the last year or two, that it's not going to help to come and tell these very, very high level marketing people, do this, do that, because they're like gods, the CMO of Kellogg's, or, the CMO of Starbucks, they're. So I understood that they're going to have to go through this experience and then they're going to understand. But what it's really about is, we have, especially in America, Americans sit down. I'm from Canada, I'm Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
We sit down in the morning in North America, you have on the table a cereal box, you have a milk box, and you read what's on the box together. There's so much space on all these consumer products to put messages that would help us get through this stage in a far more beneficial way, in a far more sustainable way. Think about everything you pick up and how much room there is if we get rid of all the stupid stuff we write on all these products, all the percentages and blah, 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 and ingredients. You don't need to take up the whole space for that. And imagine if we started putting messages, we're all in this together, let's lift each other. A lot of messages that have actually come out during the pandemic. Let's be kinder to each other. Especially kids need to get these messages. Our human ego is constantly pulling us in one direction.
Correct.
And we need to constantly have these reminders about being better humans. This whole situation, this whole pandemic is about being better humans, but we're going to need constant reminders because it's not going to come naturally.
Very nice. So I'm going to now move to the last part of our conversation, which is some questions for you personally. So, Josai has a successful career, successful life, doing so much good work for so many organizations. From where you stand today, as you look back at life and as you look ahead, what does success mean to Josiah?
Success means that I spread the most important things in the world, that I get these sort of a new value system into the world. And it's very complicating because it's sort of opposite to our current value system. Our current value system is egoistic, pyramid, get to the top, be number one, be the best. And imagine what's going to happen when we turn all this around, that we're going to compete at doing more for others, that we're going to compete at doing more for the collective. And by the way, the more successful you are at business, the more you can positively impact the collective.
Correct.
So people might get a wrong idea and think, oh, I have to start handing out money, I have to start giving away my assets. No, just the opposite. Be a very successful company. Be the most successful company in the world so you can do more good for the world, so you can positively contribute to this whole thing.
And my last question to you now, you are a startup guru in Israel. You help so many companies. And this question is for the thousands of young people who will listen to you around the world. What would your advice be to a young startup entrepreneur who's starting off on his or her journey in the world?
It's all about connection. In the past, a founder used to be able to come and read a lot of books and get an idea and consult with a few people and find some investor and start a company. And that's the old stage. We're heading into a collective stage now. So now it's very important that we understand that our human growth, accelerating our human development, is only going to be in a group from now on. There's not going to be some star entrepreneur anymore. It's not going to work like that anymore. You have to understand that you're a group of people and you're in this together. And actually, the startup world is a great example of that, how founders, they are very, very dependent on each other and they go through a lot of stuff together. But what I would say to a young entrepreneur is be very conscious. And actually, this generation of entrepreneurs that's coming up now, they're going to fix this whole mess. It's much more natural. All the things that I'm talking about, being conscious and thinking about the collective. I have a 17-year-old daughter. It comes much more naturally to this generation. They are already, it's like built in with them. They're already thinking about the collective and how to make things better. They're not thinking about just making millions of dollars. They're thinking about really doing something that's going to benefit the world. So they are going to do a much better job of fixing things than us. But what I would tell them is be very conscious of that you're doing this in a group, and that to get smarter now, we're going to get smarter in a group. We're not going to get smart anymore from sitting and reading books. The bonus of my intelligence is in the people around me. I can only get that extra clarity about how to move forward and what the best steps are, I'm going to get it from the people around me. It's between us. You know why? Because we're going to unlock all that positive energy between us. It's locked right now inside the human ego, so we can't access it. But when we get past the human ego, we're going to be able to unlock all that amazing human energy. And that's where we're going to discover all these amazing new, it's going to be lots of inspiration and new ideas. It's going to come from that, from this group of people around us.
Fabulous. Josiah, thank you so much. I mean, I'm so grateful you've shared so many of your learnings and so much of your wisdom with all of us. I wish you lots of success.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.